Part 1. A nightfall over England. The sun sinks slowly behind the hedgerows of Lincolnshire, leaving behind a cold blue twilight that spreads across the English countryside. Airfields once used for training and routine patrols now pulse with a different energy. Mechanics move quickly across the tarmac beneath dimmed lights, their silhouettes cutting through thin clouds of exhaust and engine oil. The war has entered a brutal phase. Cities burn across Europe. Entire nations hold their breath every night as bombers rise into the darkness. And here, in the quiet fields of eastern England, one aircraft waits like a silent giant of the night, the Avro Lancaster. At first glance, the Lancaster does not look elegant. It is broad, muscular, and almost industrial in its shape. Four powerful Rolls-Royce Merlin engines stretch across long wings. Beneath its belly lies a cavernous bomb bay capable of carrying payloads no other bomber in the Royal Air Force can lift. But its true identity will only be revealed once darkness falls. The Lancaster was built for night war. Inside the operations room, a group of young men gather around a large illuminated map. They are bomber crews of pilots, navigators, flight engineers, wireless operators, gunners, bomb aimers. Most are barely in their 20s. Many will not live to see the end of the war. A pointer moves slowly across the map, tracing a route deep into occupied Europe. The target tonight is an industrial city hundreds of miles away. The mission will take them over the North Sea, across layers of German radar defenses, and into a sky filled with searchlights and anti-aircraft fire. Outside, the Lancaster waits in silence. Frost forms along the edges of its wings. Ground crews finish loading bombs into the enormous bay beneath the fuselage, high explosive charges designed to shatter factories, rail yards, and war infrastructure. Each bomb slides into place with heavy metallic clicks. The aircraft grows heavier with every passing minute. The crew climbs aboard one by one. Inside the cockpit, the pilot sits high above the runway with a commanding view over the aircraft's long nose. Instruments glow softly in the dim light. The navigator unfolds charts across his table. The bomb aimer lies in the narrow glass nose, preparing the bomb sight that will guide destruction from thousands of meters above the earth. Then the engines begin to start. One by one, the Merlin engines cough into life. A deep mechanical roar rolls across the airfield. Flames flicker briefly from the exhaust stacks. The Lancaster trembles as if waking from sleep. Soon dozens of bombers across the airfield ignite their engines as well, their combined thunder echoing across the countryside like distant storm clouds. At last the runway lights flash briefly just long enough to guide the bomber into the darkness. The Lancaster begins its heavy roll forward. The engines howl as power builds. The aircraft gathers speed, lifting slowly into the night sky. Within minutes, it disappears into the darkness over Europe. Part 2. A birth of the Lancaster. The Avro Lancaster was not originally meant to become the backbone of Britain's strategic bombing campaign. Its origins lie in failure, a design that initially struggled under the pressure of wartime expectations. In the early years of the war, Britain desperately needed heavy bombers capable of striking deep into Germany. The Avro Lancaster, Lancaster's predecessor, had been created to meet this need. But the Manchester was plagued by engine problems and disappointing performance. Engineers at Avro refused to abandon the concept entirely. Instead, they redesigned the aircraft around 4 engines rather than 2. By replacing the unreliable power plants with 4 Rolls-Royce Merlin engines, they transformed the aircraft completely. What emerged from that redesign was something remarkable. The Lancaster. With its long wings and immense lifting power, the aircraft could carry bomb loads far heavier than most other bombers of its era. Its internal bomb bay ran nearly the entire length of the fuselage, allowing it to transport massive payloads including the legendary Tall Boy and Grand Slam earthquake bombs designed to destroy hardened targets. but raw power was only part of its design. The Lancaster was built to operate primarily at night, when darkness offered protection from German fighter interception. Night bombing demanded extraordinary navigation skills. Crews had to guide their aircraft across hundreds of miles using only maps, stars, and radio signals while avoiding radar detection and enemy defenses. Inside the Lancaster, each crew member carried immense responsibility. The pilot controlled the aircraft through turbulent skies and heavy flak. The navigator calculated routes through darkness. The bomb aimer prepared the bomb sight for the final run over the target. Rear gunners scanned the night sky constantly for German night fighters approaching from behind. The aircraft itself became a symbol of Britain's determination to carry the war back to the heart of Nazi Germany. Every night, hundreds of Lancasters rose into the darkness from airfields scattered across England. They formed long streams of aircraft crossing the North Sea, their navigation lights extinguished to avoid detection. The sky above Europe had become a battlefield of shadows. Part 3 added long night missions. Once airborne, the Lancaster crews entered a world that few civilians could ever imagine. The bomber climbed steadily into the cold night sky, leaving behind the safety of England's coastline. Below them stretched the dark surface of the North Sea, black and endless. The aircraft vibrated constantly as the four Merlin engines pushed it toward enemy territory. Inside the fuselage, temperatures dropped rapidly. At operational altitudes, the air outside could reach 40 degrees below zero. Crew members wore thick electrically heated suits to survive the cold. Frost often formed along the inside of the aircraft's metal skin. Navigation during these missions required absolute concentration. The navigator worked beneath dim red lights, measuring wind speed and aircraft drift across maps. Small errors could send the bomber far off course. Over enemy territory, even minor mistakes could mean flying directly into the densest German air defenses. Hours into the flight, the first signs of danger often appeared. Thin beams of light suddenly pierced the darkness below. German searchlights swept across the sky like white swords, hunting for aircraft silhouettes against the clouds. When several beams locked onto a single bomber, the aircraft became trapped in a cage of light exposed to anti-aircraft guns waiting on the ground. Flak bursts followed quickly. Black explosions blossomed around the bomber formation. Metal fragments tore through the sky, ripping into aircraft wings and fuselages. Crews felt the shockwaves as shells exploded dangerously close. Despite this chaos, the Lancasters continued forward. The target lay ahead. Part 4: A fire over Germany. As the bomber stream approached its target, tension inside the Lancaster reached its peak. The bomb aimer moved into position in the narrow glass nose of the aircraft. Below him lay the sleeping city factories, rail yards, power plants, entire districts illuminated faintly by scattered lights. Pathfinder aircraft had often arrived earlier, marking the target with flares and incendiary markers. Bright-colored fires burned on the ground, guiding the incoming bomber formations toward their objectives. The pilot held the aircraft steady as the bomb aimer took control for the final run. Through the bomb sight, he watched the ground drift slowly beneath the aircraft. The Lancaster now flew straight and level, an easy target for anti-aircraft guns. Flak intensified. Explosions shook the aircraft violently. The pilot fought to keep the bomber stable. Then the bomb aimer spoke a single word through the intercom. "Bombs gone." Below the aircraft, massive explosives began their silent descent toward the city. Part 5: The Dam Busters. Among all the missions flown by Lancasters during the war, one operation would become legendary: Operation Chastise. In May 1943, a specially trained squadron of Lancaster bombers set out on an extraordinary mission to destroy German dams in the Ruhr Valley. These dams powered factories, supplied water to industry, and supported the region's entire war infrastructure. To attack them, British engineer Barnes Wallis designed a unique weapon, the bouncing bomb. This cylindrical explosive could skip across the surface of water like a stone, pass over defensive torpedo nets, and strike the dam wall before detonating underwater. Lancaster bombers were modified specifically for this mission. Crews trained for weeks to fly at extremely low altitudes over water at night. Precision was critical. The aircraft had to release the bomb at exactly the right height, speed, and distance. When the attack finally began, the Lancasters flew so low that their wings nearly touched the water. Anti-aircraft guns fired from the dam towers as the bombers approached. Then the bombs skipped across the dark reservoir surface. Moments later, explosions shattered the massive concrete walls. Part 6 at the cost of the night war. Behind every Lancaster mission stood a devastating reality. Bomber Command suffered one of the highest casualty rates of any Allied force during the war. Thousands of young airmen never returned from their missions over Europe. Lancaster crews faced extraordinary danger every time they climbed into their aircraft. Night fighters hunted them in darkness. Flak filled the skies. Mechanical failures could doom an aircraft far from home. When a Lancaster was hit, escape was difficult. The aircraft lacked ejection seats. Crews had to navigate narrow passages inside the fuselage while the bomber fell toward the earth. Many never made it out. Yet despite these losses, the missions continued night after night. For the crews, the Lancaster became both a weapon and a fragile sanctuary, a machine that carried them through fire and darkness with remarkable resilience. Part 7 at the legacy of the Lancaster. When the war finally ended, the roar of Lancaster engines slowly faded from the skies of Europe. Airfields that once launched hundreds of bombers each night returned to silence. Many of the aircraft were scrapped. Others were preserved as monuments. But the Lancaster left behind a legacy that could never be erased. It had carried the weight of Britain's strategic bombing campaign. It had flown thousands of missions across hostile skies. It had helped reshape the course of the war, while demanding extraordinary courage from the young men who flew it. Even today, when one of the few surviving Lancasters flies during commemorations, its four Merlin engines produce a sound unlike any other aircraft. It is a deep, rolling thunder, both beautiful and haunting. A reminder of a time when entire crews vanished into the darkness each night, guided only by instruments, courage, and the fragile wings of a bomber built to fight the night war. And when the last Lancaster disappears beyond the horizon, the echo of its engines seems to whisper a truth that history never forgets: victory often carries the weight of unimaginable sacrifice.